The rain had started as a whisper, a gentle tapping on the windshield, but by the time the city lights blurred into streaks of gold and red, it was a full symphony. Wipers struggled to keep up, smearing water across the glass as if trying to erase the world outside. In the driver's seat, Julia gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles pale against the black leather. She was late, again. Her phone buzzed with another message, but she didn't dare look. Not tonight, not after the week she'd had. The intersection ahead glowed green, but Julia hesitated. Her mind replayed the argument with her boss, the missed call from her mother, the unopened bills on her kitchen table. She blinked hard, trying to focus, but the world felt heavy, as if every drop of rain pressed down on her shoulders. She exhaled, a shaky breath fogging the glass. Just a few more blocks, she told herself. Just get home. The light turned yellow. Julia pressed the gas, desperate to make it through. That's when the headlights appeared, too close, too fast, slicing through the rain like a warning. She slammed the brakes, tires shrieking, but the world spun anyway. Metal screamed, glass shattered, the world went white. For a moment there was nothing. No sound, no pain, just the strange, weightless silence that follows disaster. Julia's eyes fluttered open. The airbag had deployed, pressing her back against the seat. Her ears rang. She tasted blood. Rain poured through the broken window, cold and insistent. Somewhere a horn blared, distant and angry. She tried to move, but her body refused. Panic clawed at her chest. Was she hurt? Was anyone else? She turned her head, slow and aching, and saw the other car, a battered blue sedan crumpled against the curb. The driver's door opened. A man stumbled out, limping, one hand pressed to his forehead. He looked up, eyes wide with shock, then hurried toward her. Julia's heart pounded. She wanted to disappear, to close her eyes and wake up somewhere safe. But the man was already at her window, peering in with concern etched deep into his face. He knocked gently, his voice muffled by the rain. "Are you okay? Can you hear me?" She nodded, or thought she did. Tears stung her eyes, mixing with the rain on her cheeks. The man tried the door, but it was jammed. "Hang on," he said, voice steady despite the chaos. "I'll get help." Blue and red lights flashed in the distance. Sirens wailed, growing louder. Julia closed her eyes, letting the noise wash over her. She wanted to sleep, to drift away from the pain and fear. But the man's voice pulled her back. "Stay with me," he said, softer now. "You're not alone." Paramedics arrived, voices urgent and practiced. They pried open the door, wrapped her in blankets, checked her pulse. Julia drifted in and out, the world a blur of faces and hands. The man never left her side. He answered questions, held her hand, told her his name was Ben. "I'm a single dad," he said, as if that explained everything. "My son's at home with a sitter. I was just coming back from the grocery store." Julia tried to apologize, but the words stuck in her throat. Ben squeezed her hand. "It's okay. Accidents happen. What matters is you're alive." At the hospital, the hours blurred together. X-rays, stitches, paperwork. Julia's phone buzzed with missed calls, but she ignored them. She stared at the ceiling, replaying the crash over and over. Guilt gnawed at her. She should have been more careful. She should have seen the car. She should have done 1,000 things differently. A nurse appeared, gentle and efficient. "You have a visitor," she said. Julia frowned. Who would come? She had no family in the city, no close friends. But when the door opened, Ben stepped in, holding a paper bag and a shy smile. "I brought you something," he said, setting the bag on the table. "Just some snacks. Hospital food is the worst." Julia managed a weak laugh. "You didn't have to do that." Ben shrugged. "I wanted to. Besides, I figured you could use some company." They sat in silence for a moment, the rain tapping against the window. Julia studied Ben, his tired eyes, the bandage on his forehead, the way he fidgeted with his keys. He looked as exhausted as she felt. "I'm sorry," she said finally, "for everything." Ben shook his head. "Don't be. I've been in worse scrapes. Besides, you're here. That's what matters." Julia looked away, ashamed. I can't stop thinking about what could have happened. What if someone got hurt? What if... Ben interrupted gently. What if you give yourself a break? Life's messy. We all make mistakes. The important thing is what we do next. His words settled over her like a warm blanket. Julia felt something shift inside her, a tiny crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. She hadn't realized how lonely she was until now, how much she craved kindness. Ben stood, gathering his things. I should get home to my son, but if you need anything, call me, seriously. He scribbled his number on a napkin and left it on the table. Julia stared at it long after he'd gone, the ink smudged by her trembling fingers. That night, as the rain eased and the city quieted, Julia closed her eyes. For the first time since the crash, she didn't feel afraid. She felt seen. The next morning, sunlight crept through the hospital blinds, painting pale stripes across Julia's blanket. She woke to the low hum of voices in the hallway and the distant clatter of breakfast trays. Her body ached, but the pain was dull, manageable. She sat up slowly, wincing as she shifted her legs over the edge of the bed. The napkin with Ben's number was still on the table, the ink now dry and permanent. Julia's phone buzzed again. This time she checked it. A message from her mother. Call me when you can. Worried about you. Another from her boss. Take the time you need. Let us know when you're ready to return. She stared at the screen, feeling the weight of expectation pressing in from all sides. She wasn't ready to talk. Not yet. A nurse entered, cheerful and brisk. Good morning, Julia. How are you feeling? Julia managed a small smile. Better, I think. That's good to hear. The doctor will be by soon, but your scans look fine. You're lucky. It could have been much worse. Lucky. The word echoed in Julia's mind. She didn't feel lucky. She felt raw, exposed, as if the crash had peeled away every layer of protection she'd built over the years. She thanked the nurse and stared out the window, watching the city come alive below. A knock at the door startled her. She expected another nurse, maybe a social worker. Instead, Ben stepped in, holding a paper cup and a nervous smile. Morning, he said, offering the coffee. I figured you could use something stronger than hospital brew. Julia accepted the cup, warmth seeping into her hands. You didn't have to come back. Ben shrugged, settling into the chair beside her. I wanted to. Besides, my son insisted. He said I should check on the lady from the accident. Julia smiled beside herself. How old is he? 6. His name's Oliver. He's got more energy than sense, but he's a good kid. There was a pause, comfortable and easy. Julia sipped her coffee, letting the silence stretch. She realized she didn't mind Ben's presence. In fact, she welcomed it. Do you have family here? Ben asked gently. Julia shook her head. Not really. My parents are in Ohio. I moved here for work a few years ago. It was supposed to be a fresh start. Has it been? Ben's eyes were kind, searching. Julia hesitated. I thought it would be, but it's hard. The city's big, and I guess I never really found my place. Ben nodded, understanding in his gaze. I get that. After my wife passed, I felt lost for a long time. Moving here was supposed to help, but some days it just feels lonely. Julia looked at him, surprised by his honesty. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Ben smiled, a little sad. Most people don't. I don't talk about it much, but I think sometimes we need to. Otherwise, the loneliness just grows. Julia nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle in her chest. She'd spent so long pretending everything was fine, hiding her struggles behind a mask of competence. But here, in this sterile hospital room, with a man she barely knew, she felt safe enough to let the mask slip. They talked for a while, about work, about Oliver, about the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. Ben told her about his job as a mechanic, the challenges of single parenthood, the small victories that made it all worthwhile. Julia listened, drawn in by his warmth and resilience. Eventually, the doctor arrived, clipboard in hand. Good news, Julia. You're clear to go home today. Just take it easy for a few days and follow up with your primary care physician. Relief washed over her, tinged with anxiety. Home. The word felt foreign, almost intimidating. She wasn't sure she was ready to face the world outside these walls. Ben stood, gathering his things. "Do you need a ride? I can call a cab, or—" Julia hesitated, then nodded. "A ride would be nice. Thank you." He smiled, genuine and unforced. "It's no trouble. Besides, I owe you for scaring me half to death last night." They laughed, the tension easing. Julia dressed slowly, grateful for the simple kindness of having someone there. When she was ready, Ben helped her gather her things and walked her to the hospital entrance. Outside, the city was washed clean by the night's rain. The air smelled fresh, alive. Ben's car, a different one borrowed from a friend, waited at the curb. He opened the door for her, careful and attentive. As they drove, Julia watched the city pass by. The familiar streets suddenly new. She felt lighter, as if the crash had shaken something loose inside her. She glanced at Ben, his hands steady on the wheel, his eyes focused on the road. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything." Ben glanced over, a soft smile on his lips. "You don't have to thank me. Sometimes we all need a little help." They reached Julia's apartment, a modest building tucked between a bakery and a laundromat. Ben parked and turned to her, hesitation in his eyes. "Would you like to meet Oliver sometime? He's been asking about you." Julia's heart skipped. She hadn't expected this. An invitation, a chance to step into someone else's world. She nodded, a genuine smile breaking through. "I'd like that." Ben grinned, relief evident. "Great, I'll call you." Julia watched him drive away, the car disappearing into the morning traffic. She stood on the sidewalk, the city humming around her, and realized she was smiling. Not because everything was perfect, but because for the first time in a long time, she felt hope. Inside her apartment, Julia set her bag down and looked around. The space felt different, less like a prison, more like a sanctuary. She opened the windows, letting in the fresh air, and sat on the edge of her bed. She picked up her phone, scrolling through messages, and paused at Ben's number. She typed a quick message. "Thank you for today. I'd love to meet Oliver." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The reply came almost instantly. "He'll be thrilled. Let's plan for this weekend." Julia smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in months. She closed her eyes, letting the sunlight warm her face, and allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things were changing. Saturday arrived with a promise of spring in the air. Soft sunlight, the scent of budding flowers, and the city's usual rush slowed by the weekend's gentle pace. Julia awoke early, nerves fluttering in her stomach. She stood in front of her closet, debating what to wear, then laughed at herself. It wasn't a date, she reminded herself. She was just meeting a little boy and his dad, two people who had already changed the course of her week, maybe even her life. Ben texted her just after 10. "We're at the park. Oliver's already conquered the jungle gym. No rush. Come when you're ready." Julia smiled at the message, grabbed her jacket, and headed out, her steps lighter than they'd been in months. The park was alive with families, laughter, and the distant bark of dogs chasing frisbees. Julia spotted Ben near the swings, his hair ruffled by the breeze, a coffee in one hand, and a watchful eye on a small boy racing across the grass. Oliver was a whirlwind of energy, dark curls bouncing, sneakers flashing, his laughter ringing out above the noise. Ben waved as Julia approached. "Hey, you made it." Julia smiled, feeling the last of her nerves melt away. "Wouldn't miss it." Oliver skidded to a stop in front of her, eyes wide with curiosity. "Are you the lady from the car?" Julia knelt to his level, her smile gentle. "I am, and you must be Oliver." He nodded, solemn for a moment, then grinned. "Dad said you're really brave." Julia glanced at Ben, surprised. He shrugged, a little embarrassed. "You are," he said quietly. "You went through a lot." Oliver tugged at Julia's hand. "Want to see how high I can swing?" She laughed, letting him lead her to the swings. Ben followed, his presence steady and reassuring. For the next hour, Julia was swept into Oliver's world, pushing swings, racing down slides, listening to stories about dinosaurs and superheroes. She found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in ages. After a while, they settled on a bench with ice cream cones, the sun warm on their faces. Oliver chattered about school and his favorite cartoons, his words tumbling over each other in excitement. Julia listened, enchanted by his enthusiasm. Ben watched them, a soft smile on his lips. "He likes you," he said quietly. Julia blushed, looking down at her melting ice cream. "I like him too. He's a great kid." Ben's gaze grew serious. "He's been through a lot. Losing his mom was hard. I try to be both parents, but some days—" He trailed off, searching for the right words. Julia reached out, her hand covering his. "You're doing an amazing job, Ben. He's happy. That's what matters." Ben squeezed her hand, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." They sat in comfortable silence, watching Oliver chase a butterfly across the grass. Julia felt something shift inside her, a sense of belonging, of connection. She realized she wanted more gaze like this, more laughter, more sunlight. As the afternoon faded, Ben offered to walk her home. Oliver skipped ahead, collecting dandelions and singing to himself. Julia and Ben strolled side by side, their conversation easy and unhurried. At her building, Ben hesitated. "Would you like to do this again? Maybe dinner next time?" Julia smiled, her heart fluttering. "I'd like that." He grinned, relief and hope mingling in his eyes. "Great, I'll call you." Oliver waved from the sidewalk. "Bye, Julia. See you soon." Julia watched them go, her heart full. She climbed the stairs to her apartment, the world brighter than it had been in a long time. Days turned into weeks. Julia and Ben saw each other often. Dinners, park visits, quiet evenings spent talking about everything and nothing. Oliver grew attached to Julia, his trust and affection a gift she cherished. She found herself opening up, sharing stories she'd kept hidden for years. Ben listened, never judging, always encouraging. One evening, as they walked along the river, Ben stopped, turning to face her. "Julia, I know things haven't been easy for either of us, but I feel like I've known you forever. You make me want to hope again." Julia's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "You opened my heart, Ben. After the crash, I thought I'd never feel safe again, but you showed me kindness when I needed it most." He took her hands in his voice steady. "We can build something together, not perfect, but real." Julia nodded, her heart overflowing. "I want that. I want us." They stood in the fading light, the city humming around them, and for the first time in years, Julia felt whole. Months passed. Julia found a new job, one that valued her skills and gave her time for the people she loved. She and Ben built a life together, messy, joyful, full of laughter and second chances. Oliver thrived, his world expanding with Julia's steady presence. One rainy afternoon, as thunder rumbled in the distance, Julia sat by the window, watching Oliver draw superheroes at the kitchen table. Ben joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Do you ever think about that night?" he asked softly. Julia nodded. "All the time. It changed everything." Ben kissed her forehead. "I'm glad you closed your eyes, because when you opened them, you let us in." Julia smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You saved me, Ben, not just from the crash, but from myself." He shook his head. "We saved each other." Outside, the rain eased, sunlight breaking through the clouds. Julia watched Oliver, her heart full of gratitude. She knew life would never be perfect, but it would always be real, and that was enough. As the evening settled in, Julia closed her eyes, listening to the laughter and love that filled her home. She knew, without a doubt, that she was exactly where she was meant to be.